I guess the easiest thing to say is I don't identify as like living with a chronic illness. It doesn't define me. Like, it's just a part of who I am. So I don't walk around with a chip on my shoulder being like, I have colitis, so I have to do this. Like, no, it's just, I'm Cory, I'm a bike racer. I enjoy, the things I enjoy in life. And yeah, I happen to have IBD.
Schmoozers, welcome back to the podcast that helps proud Jews promote their personal brands. I am David Cobby, and today we have an episode with a fellow schmoozer, aka a podcast host. Stomach problems suck. We've all had those days where our stomachs aren't feeling right and we feel like total crap. My next guest today has unfortunately struggled with chronic and severe stomach issues. However, these stomach problems have not stopped him from becoming a professional cyclist and advocating for those who also struggle with IBD. Fresh off his race in Arizona, please welcome to my podcast, Cory Greenberg. Cory, what's up, man? How are we doing today?
Hey, David. Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
This is awesome.
How was your race?
It was tough. It was a good one. It's always difficult when you show up to, something that you've never done before, and you kind of, there's some big learning curves. So, my professional career has primarily been road racing. And so this was an off-road event. So it was, going the best, when you come like to an event and you have like the best in the world showing up, sometimes it's a bit of a kick in the pants to kind of like that learning curve, when you first show up to race the best, and you got a lot to learn, but it was a lot of fun.
Sure,
I'm excited to, keep pushing on. So.
Exactly. And listen, at the end of the day, you still got to race and you still had fun doing it. And, you're in a place where a lot of people that want to be professional cyclists want to be, and you're in that place already. So you should be very fortunate that you have that skill set to do things like this.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was great. And then also to be able to incorporate a lot of what I'm doing on the advocacy side for inflammatory bowel disease into that race was that was really the big takeaway for me. So, but no, definitely it's a privilege. I'll say that much. Yeah,
for sure. All right, Cory. So before we get into your cycling career and your advocacy for IBD, we got to start off with our Jewish geography profile. Essentially how this works is I will ask you a series of 4 to 5 rapid fire questions, schmooze on them a little bit. The tendency is that they're not super rapid fire because we Jews like to schmooze. I know I made that joke millions of times on this podcast, but I'm going to continue making because I think it's funny. So, all right, before let's just get right into it. So Cory, where are you from? What's your hometown?
Born and raised in Simi Valley, California. So it's northwest of Los Angeles, just on the LA County border with Ventura County. So grew up there. And then I spend half my time there. Yeah.
Very nice. And where did you attend college, and what was your major?
Yeah, I went to Cal State University Northridge, and I studied kinesiology. Specifically applied fitness, active lifestyle development.
I love it. So did you ever explore the personal training side of, like, I guess, kinesiology, or were you just very focused kind of like on your own kind of physical fitness?
I mean, like the courses that you take, they put you through, some physical therapy type stuff. I worked in the swimming lab with some individuals that had like cerebral palsy. And then I had a fitness lab where you work with someone else with some sort of, life altering condition that, it's kind of in a rehab setting. But outside of the college setting, no, I was racing full time, even in college. So once I graduated, it was still focused on racing. And then my career kind of took off from that point. So all I've known is bicycle racing. So with a little bit of schooling in there, but we want to call it that.
There you go. So on that topic a little bit, what is your favorite sport aside from cycling? And by the way, for those people that think cycling isn't a sport, you're absolutely wrong. I'm sure Cory could go off on you for that. But what's your favorite sport aside from cycling?
Oh, it's kind of altered. So that my favorite to watch these days would have to be probably Formula One. I kind of
Ooh,
dabble in that. Yeah.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
funny you say that because one of my roommates is obsessed with Formula One, and I'm a three sport kind of watcher: baseball, basketball, football, and I just started
Yeah.
watching Formula One literally like 5 months ago, and I love it. I think it's so fun, and I mean Max Verstappen is just killing it right now, so it's
Yeah.
kind of made the sport a little not fun, but you got Lewis Hamilton joining Ferrari next year, and it should be pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think it's crazy too because you have a really a big carryover between Formula One and cycling. So you're seeing a lot of Formula One drivers participating in cycling, specifically like Valtteri Bottas. He's now racing full time gravel along with his Formula One career. So and he's sponsored by one of the biggest bike companies out there. So there's a lot because they train a lot on the road bike fitness wise. So yeah, a lot of like carry like Red Bull's heavily invested in cycling. And so I don't know, there's just like this, I think there's this like connection between fitness and also like the world of aerodynamics and how to like be the fittest athlete yet be the fastest athlete, and that kind of carries over a lot into Formula One, right? You see that like whether it's the
Right.
cars and that, I mean, the drivers are just incredibly fit athletes. So I don't know, just kind of goes
Yeah.
hand in hand. So
It's funny you say
yeah, I
that
enjoy
because
that.
I was literally having this argument with the same roommate who loves Formula One. And I was like, oh, Formula One drivers don't work out, and he was like, actually, they have to be very in shape to sit in that car for
Yeah.
however long it is, 2-3 hours. And I was like, well, like, you know what? I guess you're right. Like there is some you have to be in shape to like sit
Oh
in that
yeah.
car. Yeah, I feel like you have to have a good core, right?
Oh yeah, and then their neck strength because of the G forces, and then also like
Yes.
that they have to be under a certain weight because the car is optimized. They can't be an overweight individual. So like, yeah, no, those guys are. They definitely probably train more than they actually drive. That's probably my good assumption on that point. So yeah.
I I I did not know that. All right, final not so rapid fire question. On the topic of Purim, which is coming up in I think it's like a week or something. We dress up kind of like the Jewish Halloween, etc. So Cory, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit, but you're going to a Halloween party and you have nothing to wear. What is like your go-to, like you're scrummaging through your closet? What's your go-to costume that you'd put on?
Mm, that's a good question. I'm going to a Halloween. I probably would put on, if I had to do it now, I'd probably put on Lederhosen and go as like a Bavarian, like
Okay,
just because I live in
that's
Munich.
cool.
So just kind of like I have a pair of Lederhosen, so I probably would go dressed as yeah, some
There,
Bavarian,
there you go. There you go.
ready to drink
All
some
right,
beer.
so let's. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'd love to drink some beer right now. That's Cory. You're reading my mind right now. Um, let's talk about your Jewish identity for a second. So obviously, this podcast is for proud Jews. Help them promote their Jewish brand, their personal brand, whatever it is. You have a very unique Jewish identity. Your mother's side is Jewish, but you've never had a bar mitzvah. Your dad's side is Christian, and you were predominantly raised going to church a lot. Despite having an extremely Jewish last name, Greenberg, you weren't necessarily in touch with your Jewish identity for a good chunk of your life. So let me ask you this. What made you kind of go back and look at your Jewish identity again after having a childhood and upbringing where you weren't super in touch with practicing Judaism and being a part of Jewish culture?
Yeah, I think, well, for me, it's kind of, I grew up in a split household. So my mother and father never were married or together when I was born. So, you have like two completely different identities within each household, or at least I did, right? So like the way that let's say my dad's household acted was very different than from my mom's household and just personality wise. And look, my mom's side, they're from New York, they're Jewish, they're very loud, they're very, brash and just open and smothering. And then my dad's side, they're from the South. So it's like, two different worlds, right? And so I kind of had this like dichotomy of like, in one aspect, I feel very much, I have my mom's last name, and I feel very much in that atmosphere, kind of like the Jewish roots. My grandparents speak Yiddish. It's, I mean, they all have Jewish names. It was very much a part of my upbringing on that side. My grandma's still very much a part of, the Jewish culture and going to temple and things like that. So for me, that it was, I don't know, it was interesting because like at one aspect we'd go and celebrate Christmas, and then we would have Hanukkah, and then we would have the High Holy Days, and then we would have Easter and like all these other things as a young person. And so kind of growing up now, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. Like I feel, I think at first I probably was a bit more timid about like saying I was Jewish, just kind of in a social setting. Because the people I was around, like the sports I did and stuff like that, like just wasn't a big Jewish presence. And then I don't know, like in where I grew up, you kind of would get, I wouldn't say made fun of, but there was times where like, oh, my last name would get made fun of or whatever. So I don't know, I just kind of wasn't really outspoken about it per se. But as I've gotten older, I've learned to kind of embrace it and just realize like it's a huge part of who I am. And I really kind of stuck out when I moved to Europe for racing. And you kind of, it was like the first time I went to, let's say, like Auschwitz, or kind of like got to see where my family came from. Like whether it was, the push away from Europe during World War II, or, like just figuring out where my great grandfather, who I got to meet as a young child, like where he grew up, and just learning about the Jewish side of the family when I went back there. And I don't know, it just kind of rang a bell. Like I started to feel like, okay, I'm a part of something. This is who I am. You kind of resonate with it. But yeah, it's still kind of, it's weird. Like it's still, as a grown adult, like I'm still kind of, you're in between, right? Like it's, you have two very different identities still, and trying to kind of balance that. Like my dad's side of the family, it's interesting because like I don't talk to them about that side of who I am, because they can't relate with that. Vice versa. Like, I mean, I don't really talk to my Jewish grandma about, oh, like what church is all about, because it's just hard for her to relate to, that kind of environment. So yeah, I don't know. You're just kind of paving your own path, really. So it's a tough one. I don't think I've ever really fully embraced one or the other. It's just kind of, I don't know, I'm in this kind of middle gray zone, but very much who I am. So I'm not ashamed of it. Yeah.
Exactly. No, I honestly, I think that's very cool that you get to experience kind of both the religions to a degree. And, there's obviously some advantages to being Jewish and disadvantages to being Jewish. There's obviously some advantages to practicing Christianity. And so, again, like I think it's very cool to have sort of that, you essentially have both options where, like you said, you could be celebrating Hanukkah, and then, I think there was actually one time where, Hanukkah like fell on Christmas or something. It was some weird thing.
Oh, really?
And it was really weird because you know how the Jewish calendar is. And but growing up, I grew up in a very small town in Minnesota called Golden Valley, and then I moved to St. Louis Park when I was older. But my neighbors were all Christian, and we obviously would assimilate with them, learned about Christianity that way, etc. And for the longest time, we've now been doing we call it like a Christmaka party, where we'll have like a Christmas tree and we'll light Hanukkah candles or something, and we'll make latkes, and it's just like a great way to kind of for each of us to like celebrate our religions together. Like, do you do that to an extent? Like, you have like a mashup sort of party, or is it kind of like very divided where it's like you'll be Christian one day and then Jewish the other day, if that makes sense?
No, I'd say like over the years, like my Jewish side of the family, like my immediate side of the family, they they celebrate like Christmas in the sense of like a Hallmark holiday, like as a cultural thing, not as a religious thing per se. So it's funny because my mom's house, she'll have she'll decorate a few. She has two Christmas trees. One is like the Hanukkah tree, so it's for like Jewish identity, and one is just like a Christmas tree to put presents underneath to give to the cousins and things like that. So, yeah, it's definitely a mix for sure. And then when I was younger, like my family's pretty split now, like they're all over the country, but when we were all together, there was definitely like we celebrated the holidays as a family, like the Jewish holidays, and there was a sense of like cultural Christmas, but it had no religious aspect whatsoever. But my father's side is completely opposite. Like there's I'd go to church for Christmas with them, and there would be very much like your stereotypical kind of Christmas holiday celebrations, but yeah, no, it's kind of a mix. Yeah. So I don't know. I think there's been a blending of kind of, American culture with the Jewish identity and high holy days and Hanukkah and all the rest. So yeah. But when I'm in Europe, it's a little, yeah, we don't do anything like that. So
I got you. So you're living in Munich. You moved there for cycling, like you mentioned, and obviously Germany, very, not such a great place for Jews to be in the past. And you actually mentioned to me that your wife's grandmother was forced to join the Hitler Youth when she was younger. So my question to you is, how does like knowing that, obviously she was forced to join the Hitler Youth, but like, how does that knowing that like a part of your wife's family was forced to be involved with essentially the Nazi party, how does knowing that like enhance or not enhance your Jewish identity? Like, does that make you even more proud to be a Jew living in Germany, knowing that your wife's grandmother was forced to join the Hitler Youth, or does it not really impact your Jewish identity?
No, it definitely does. I would it's weird. It's like this goodness. So that's kind of it's a loaded thing for me because I live in Munich, which is the capital of the Nazi Party, or was the capital of the Nazi Party, and so there's still remnants of a lot of that. And in Germany, everything is like underneath the surface. The history it's there, but it's not boiling over. Like it's quite behind the curtain. So, if you walk around Munich and you look around, you can see, hey, there's Hitler's old office. There's the SS office. There's the Nazi district. There's like a specific place in the center of town where, so when they had the beer hall putsch in 1923, I believe, there was between the Nazis and the local police, there was a shootout, and a few of the Nazis were killed, and so they resurrected a placard that went on the side of what's called Odeonsplatz, and it's just this like big square in the center of town, and there used to be SS officers that would stand there, and so every time you walk by, you used to have to salute them as a person of the party. So there's this alleyway that kind of diverts you around, and they've kind of laid it out now in hindsight in gold, so it showed where the Jews used to walk, so they didn't have to walk by and salute the Nazis. So you get these cues, like that you're, as an individual, you're walking around, you're like, okay, well, I don't feel at all like in modern times, like the weight of what obviously had transpired. Like it's such a warm and loving country, but if we were there 90 years ago, it would have been a completely different environment for me. And as much as I like to think like, oh, I would be fine. No, I wouldn't be, right? Because it's, I'm a Jewish person. I have a Jewish last name, and, my family all comes from there. So that kind of hits me. But at the same time, like that's I'm so removed from that like when I'm with my wife or I'm with her family, it's only love. Like there is no hesitation whatsoever, or there's no thought. Like oddly enough, people find my last name and her last name quite beautiful. She gets complimented all the time. And so some people connect the dots that Greenberg is a Jewish last name, but most people just like in Germany, they see that name and they compliment her. So there isn't quite this connection in modern time. But what I feel is like, yeah, I've walked into the house and like my wife's grandmother has like a thimble case that represents kind of the history of her and her family throughout years. And, there's trinkets in there. And like I had found like Nazi party badges in there and stuff. So, they just kind of like brings you back. And yeah, like if you go back 90 years ago, she was forcibly put into the Hitler Youth along with my wife's grandfather. So like that was a normal thing. And, to look at it today and to think like, wow, her granddaughter is, married to a Jewish person, has a Jewish last name, is partaking in, Jewish things. Like we went to my cousin's Orthodox wedding this past summer in New York, and my wife came and just was blown away. She loved it. Like she just loved it. So, I don't know. It's just such it's tough because it's like we're so removed, right? It's hard as like you and I in our age to kind of like think back like, wow, this happened. But at the same time, I guess you could look at modern day and look at what's going on in Israel and kind of think like, okay, like it's still very prevalent, like there's still some, animosity towards the Jewish people. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like you kind of maybe have a little chip on your shoulder when you walk around in a place like that. I'm only a few miles from a concentration camp that I've been a few times, and I've taken a few of our family members there as they come to visit. And it just reminds you, you go back, you see the crematorium and you walk through the museum and you see like the artifacts that are left behind. And then you realize, okay, yeah, that there was definitely a different world.
For sure. And is there a large Jewish population in Germany right now, or is it, are they still pretty small, far and few?
It's pretty small. Yeah. Yeah. So I heard a joke like that. Someone was saying like, why, like, I can't find a good bagel in Germany. And I said, oh, I wonder why. It's like, not too...
They're all in New York. They're all in New York.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's talk about your cycling career. Like, obviously you moved to Munich to continue your cycling career, but I want to go back to like how you got into cycling, because it's such a unique sport. It's such a, I want to say like it's a niche kind of like acquired taste kind of sport. Like people ride bikes casually and it's great. Like Minnesota, for example, great place to ride bikes. Like we have a place here called the Greenway, which is essentially like a bike highway that goes all around Minneapolis. Loved it as a kid, would ride my bike, but competing professionally is a different beast. I mean, that's like with any sport. So talk about like how you first got started in cycling and what made you want to like continue your cycling career.
Yeah. So I never was really someone that did a lot of, I mean, I tried every kind of like stereotypical American sport, baseball, football, dabbled in soccer a little bit or whatever, but I always found myself doing like action sports. So I was like playing paintball as a young kid, riding motorcycles, and I ended up getting a mountain bike to get in like better shape. I was kind of a chubby kid, like in high school. So I was, my dad, he was like a professional motocross rider for a while. And so I don't know, I just kind of grew up doing things like that, going to the desert and riding bikes. So I got a mountain bike to get in shape, and I ended up loving it. Like I just fell in love. And it was like that thing that I never was really good at, riding motorcycles and things. And so once I got a bike, I found myself like instantly, I was like pretty darn good. And I won like the California championship as a young guy. And so yeah, I just took to it really quickly. And that passion just kind of grew, and I started watching it on TV. And I was that odd kid in high school because nobody watched it. Nobody watched Tour de France like as a 14-year-old. So so that passion just kind of grew, and I just got plugged in. I got like anything, like if you were joining a T-ball league or whatever, it's same thing with cycling. It's there, that kind of entry level youth cycling stuff. So got plugged in, got onto a team in like the LA area, and that just kind of grew from there. And they started taking me all over the US and all over the world. And then that just spiraled, just kept going and going. And then got my first professional contract in the US, and then, worked my way up the ladder and then moved to Europe where the sport's like at its biggest. And then that culminated with racing with one of the biggest teams in the world. So, which oddly enough is owned by someone that, a mutual connection. So Charles Aaron, who is from St. Paul area. So, and very devout Jew. And yeah, so yeah, we've had a long conversation about him and I about just kind of, he sent me to Saudi Arabia last year for a race. And I remember him like texting me like, hey, I'm kind of worried, like you going there with that last name of yours. But yeah. So that's how I got into it, and it just progressed. And then now I'm racing kind of a mixed calendar. Like I'm adding in a lot more professional off-road racing. And the reason being is that that side of the sport's growing, but also, I was diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease at 22. So that kind of put a roadblock in my career and in like the path that I took. So not many people get diagnosed with that and then continue on to have a professional sports career. But, it's 1 in 100 people are being diagnosed with that condition in the US. So it's a lot of people. So that influenced a lot of like kind of the development and the path I took. And then now I'm doing a lot more advocacy through the sport. So I'm doing many different types: mountain biking, gravel, road. So that way I can interact with more people and have a bigger and broader audience. So
he's schmoozing around, guys. That's what you got to do. That's what you got to do to get your personal brand big. Exactly.
All day.
There you go.
Yeah.
So before we get into kind of the IBD part, I want to talk about, maybe like a highlight or like your favorite, I guess, race that you've done in your cycling career. Like, I know you probably have a lot to choose from. Like, you've been fortunate enough to ride in many, many races. Why don't you talk about your favorite race? It doesn't even have to be like a race that you placed best in. Maybe it's just like a race that you enjoyed the most.
That's I think a few kind of pop up. If I were to like reminisce and say, okay, take me back to this place. Yeah, I did a race in New Zealand. It was like one of the first international races I ever did as an athlete, and I had a blast. Like, I had never, like, it just was New Zealand. Like, it sounded so I don't know, exotic, like you're, as a young guy. And I went down there. It was like a 10-day event, and it was wild. Like just going down to the, like the very tip of New Zealand, the southern point, you're seeing like penguins at one point of the race. And then you're in like, rain and snow, and then you're in extreme heat. Like, the climate down there is just wild. So that for me was pretty cool. And then just everything that came along with it, and some of the stories I can't say. That's probably one that I really enjoy the most. And then the US, there's this race in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the culture around this race, it's like 3 days in the heart of the Midwest, and you get like 30,000 spectators, and it's just this wild party that these people are, participating in while we're racing. And it's all like at nighttime in these like downtown settings and super high pace. And I don't know, there was just always, that was like the one race, every year I kind of looked up to going to. And then I had the privilege to win it once I got to the professional level. And that kind of like put me on the map, because that's like the biggest criterium in it. That's a style of course. It's like let's say like a mile long, and they're in these downtown settings. So you get, people coming out to watch it. They're drinking beer. There's music. There's this whole environment, and you end up winning it. Yeah. So that was a big one for me. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you talked about how in New Zealand and these other races, like there's some pretty, I would say, harsh conditions that you have to ride through, whether it's rain, snow, if you have ever biked in the winter in Minnesota. No, I'm kidding. But like you gotta really prepare your body to to go through, a race where you're riding for hours and hours at a time. So what do you do, Cory, to kind of like stay in shape, make sure that your body's you make sure that first of all, you're mentally there. And second, like you're physically able to do these rides. Like walk me through, like you'll pre-ride kind of routine. What does that look like? What is Cory Greenberg doing 2 hours, hour before his race?
Oh, before the race. Yeah, overthinking everything, most likely. Yeah. Yeah, it depends on the race. Sometimes I'm like cool as a cucumber. Sometimes I'm just sweating bullets. You know, there's like a gravity, when it comes to racing. So, like if I go do like some small local event where it's like I'm going to train and just, get some time racing the bike, but it's not like a big national or international event. Sometimes I'm like, I could care less. Like, and then those are the best races you have because you're just kind of going in with like a clear mindset. And I like that. And then there's races where, last year I was preparing for the US National Championships. And it was like a 2-month prep, like really focused. Like, I mean, I was racing in between, but the goal was nationals. And I got there and I completely like fell apart. Like I was just not in a good mental place. Like I had so fixated on this one event and like little finite things like just set me off. And it was just like, you're on a knife's edge sometimes. Like you're as a high level athlete, like we prepare and the goal is that you show up on that day ready to go 100%. And sometimes you show up a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of like that 100% was a few days prior, and so and that really could mess you up mentally, or you could mess it up yourself because you're overthinking things. And so yeah, I don't know, there's a spectrum. So sometimes I'm thinking about nothing, like, or sometimes I'm just shooting the breeze with whoever, is in the team or what it might be. But typically 2 hours before a race, yeah, you're like, you're getting there. We arrive in a bus with the team. So, and then there's like a staging area, there's fans, you're signing autographs, you're some sort of meeting the team's having about the race for the day, or getting, the mechanics are sorting out the bikes, and you're working on we have a radio, typically like in the race. So you're hearing from the team car. And so, hey, you're doing all these little things. Then they have like a presentation where you go up on stage. And so sometimes it's like, you don't really have a ton of time to kind of think about it. But yeah, I mean, depending on the race and who's there, like I'm just like, go to the bathroom or just, really just kind of like nervous and butterflies and yeah, all sorts of stuff. So depends on the race.
For sure. So you're not like you're not like a superstitious guy. Like I know like a lot of athletes will have like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before. So you're just kind of doing whatever you can before the race, right?
Well, I mean, we like, there's a routine for sure. Like you have like you're kind of,
okay.
I know guys that'll eat the same. Yeah, you're right. Like there's dudes that'll eat like ham and cheese and bread. Like that's all they eat before the race, or, I don't get wild. Like a lot of times it depends on the race and the level that you're racing at. But like, the team might be preparing breakfast for you, or you might be in the hotel setting where they have like a buffet. So you're putting your own, you're kind of putting whatever you want on the plate. Or sometimes you're just by yourself. Like if it's a local event, I'm not going with a team or my team. So yeah, you're just eating your normal routine. So yeah, I don't typically like, I eat a lot of the same things. I wouldn't say it's like superstitious. It's just I know it works for my body. So yeah, I'll eat, and it's very like boring. So like you think you want to go to like IHOP and eat like pancakes and load up on tons of like French toast and some good stuff, but no, it's super simple, like rice and eggs. Nothing crazy.
Right. I got you. Hey, it's a lot of protein, a lot of carbs. That's what you want. You want something simple, easy to digest, I feel like.
Yeah, but I'm also a foodie, like, so goodness, like when you're in Germany, you go to these buffets or whatever, and like it's just full of like wonderful breads and meats and cheeses and all these great things, and you're just like, I don't want to eat all this, but you got to watch, even when you're racing, we have to watch our weight. So yeah, I think I look forward to the most like after the race, like eating the things that once in a blue moon I want to eat. So
on the topic of food, right? So you have IBD. You obviously have some restrictions on what you can eat, etc. Before we go there, I want to talk about kind of like your journey of how you initially found out that you had IBD. So walk me through that entire process of like you finding out that you have IBD, and what's your like initial reaction to having this disease?
Yeah, that's a good one. My first encounter, I was at a mountain bike race, and I went to the restroom, and lo and behold, there was a lot of blood involved. Just put it that way. You kind of like, what in the world is going on here? So yeah, how did I find out? Well, I ended up telling my grandmother. We were just chatting, and she kind of caught wind. Her mother, so this is the Jewish side, by the way. Her mother died of complications from Crohn's disease. So, this IBD is pretty prevalent in the Jewish community, especially Ashkenazi Jews and Northern Europeans. Yeah, it's very, very common. So to hear that someone has some sort of bowel issues in the Jewish community is kind of like, well, that's pretty typical. So yeah, I had talked to my grandmother, telling her, I was just going through some stuff, whatever. And she's recommended I go and see a gastroenterologist. And so I did. And I was diagnosed. I had a sigmoidoscopy, which is like similar to a colonoscopy, but they don't go as far into your colon. So very low down. And so, yeah, they found inflammation in there. So I was diagnosed. And yeah, so that's kind of how it started. I was in college at the time, racing, of course. And it just progressed because I never really took it seriously. It was one of those things like, at your age, if you get diagnosed something like that, you're kind of like, well, all right, I'll be all right. I'm going to go to this party or something, like screw it. But yeah, that was kind of my thing. I was like, I'm just going to train. I don't care. Like, screw this thing. This isn't going to bother me. But what I had to do was like enemas and suppositories at that age. And you're just like, well, that's kind of a bummer. And so, yeah, and then you're in this team environment. So imagine being in like, the dorm room with a bunch of your dorm flatmates and like having to like, all right, well, I got to go use this suppository. I'll be right back. But so yeah, you don't say things like that. So you don't take care of yourself, and it just progressed. It got worse, and then it hospitalized me. It like completely took over like my entirety of my colon. So then it was diagnosed as ulcerative colitis. So inflammatory bowel disease is made up of ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, and very different from IBS. So that's, like a lot of people confuse that, but yeah, it's not the same. And so IBD is an autoimmune disease. And so, yeah, then I was hospitalized and basically given an ultimatum. It was like, all right, well, we're going to either get this under control, and if we can't, we have to remove your colon. So I was like, well, that's a bummer, because that would ruin pretty much every ambition I've had up to this point to be like not only a professional athlete, but like, how am I going to go to school? How am I going to, leave this place as a normal person? So luckily enough, like due to, modern medicine, I got what they call a biologic, and that's autoimmune suppressing drug. And that really like helped me a lot. But at that point, I had to change my lifestyle. So I had to like figure out diet and, the exercise in which I'm partaking in, like how to manage that better, how to manage fatigue, how to manage, this complete new lifestyle to suppress this condition, but like be a healthy and active and kind of, normal person. So that was like this new journey. And what I knew is like in cycling, I knew how to prepare for a race. So I kind of took that approach of like preparing my body to be as healthy as possible and like get out of this hospital. So that's what I did. And from there, I just built myself back and build a team of people around me and a community that can, keep me healthy and happy and moving forward. And so that's what I did. And lo and behold, here I am 10 years past that, 12 years now, in complete remission, and had a full professional career and still doing it, and now trying to help others with the condition. So pretty, yeah, pretty weird journey,
I
but it's like,
I love.
it is what it is.
Hey, listen,
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you're cycling with your professional athlete with IBD, you're pushing through every single moment where you're struggling is just amazing to me. I was actually just listening to this podcast where Deion Sanders, like the great Deion Sanders, was talking about how the best athletes, there's good athletes, right? But then there's great athletes. The great athletes know how to perform when they're like tired, when they're sick, when they're, when they have stomach issues. Like there's all these things that like really separate like you from like a mediocre athlete for like a really good athlete.
Yeah.
So would you say like having IBD and having all these kind of hurdles in life to kind of continue your racing career, do you think that's motivated you to become a better cyclist? Or would you say like there are other ways where you've kind of been able to like push past pain and use kind of like, I don't know, anger, whatever it is, to kind of help you motivate yourself to perform better in competition?
I would say at first, like what motivated me, like, so I was diagnosed and I got healthy. Like what was motivating me then was to get healthy and get back to what I was doing. And then once I got back there and I realized like, okay, like I was very like stringent in like what I ate and the lifestyle I led, because it was very new, and the thoughts of the pain and like the real suffering I went through were still very present. And I think over time, like as you get further away from that kind of point of your life, those types of thoughts kind of drift away. So it's you don't like, I don't look at it now and go like, oh, I really need to like focus and make sure I'm healthy because I don't want to be that person on the bathroom floor sleeping and in that pain, because that, I don't know, that it's almost like you tend to forget about that. So like what motivates me now is quite different than what motivated me then. But I will say this, that I've never struggled more in a bike race than I did as like suffering from the condition at its peak, right? Like that was the worst.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's incredibly hard to perform when you're dealing with that condition, like when it's flaring is what they call it, when it's active. It's debilitating. So even trying to be an athlete, like I tried to balance it. Like before I was hospitalized, I was racing and going nonstop, trying to like pursue what I was doing, and it just made it worse. So what motivates me now, yeah, like I don't think any sort of pain or suffering in the bike race can come close to what I was dealing with on a personal level. But yeah, nowadays it's like, I think what motivates me more now is I guess the easiest thing to say is I don't identify as like living with a chronic illness. It doesn't define me. Like it's just a part of who I am. So I don't walk around with a chip on my shoulder being like, I have colitis, so I have to do this. Like, no, it's just, I'm Cory, I'm a bike racer. I enjoy, the things I enjoy in life. And yeah, I happen to have IBD. It's hard for people to kind of maybe get to that point because they have, they're struggling with it. And so it's constantly like rearing its head and a part of your life, but it's gotten to a place where it's just in maintenance now, So it's hard to derive motivation from that. But what motivates me now is when I hear other people struggling and then they reach out to me like nonstop. Like every week I have phone calls with people who call me and like, hey, I'm dealing with this, or they'll reach out to me on Instagram and then ask me questions. And then oftentimes I end up having a conversation with them on the phone or whatever it may be. And it's all the same questions. What do I need to be eating? How do I manage fatigue? I love riding my bike. I love exercising. How do I get back to that? So that motivates me now. And that's why you're kind of seeing me take this different approach to like associating IBD awareness with challenging like these great races and like rebranding the way you see IBD, and less of like, hey, it's this chronic debilitating condition, as no. It's like, hey, this is like a challenge in the form of a sporting event. And if you happen to have, this condition, like you could push back against the narrative of, hey, like you shouldn't be doing this sport. Like you're sick. You're not. Like this is part of who you are. And if we can get you to a place where you feel like it doesn't define you, but it's just a part of you, like then that to me is like the motivation that really drives me now.
Cory, that phenomenal answer. And you've kind of set yourself up really well for the next and final segment of this podcast, where we talk about your personal brand. So Cory, you've started Ride for IBD, which you just did a really good job of kind of explaining what the goal and essence of it is not to have IBD necessarily define you, but knowing how to live with it, how to be a professional athlete with it, etc., which I think is a very powerful mission. And it's great that you're using your platform as an athlete to kind of assist other people that are in a similar position to you. So how did you initially start Ride for IBD? Obviously, you've lived with IBD for a good majority of your life. What made you want to start it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, I had this lived experience, this lived journey, coming through my own personal health battles to get back to, like professional sports. And so you acquire this knowledge, you acquire this lived experience, and I became a bit more outspoken about it once I got comfortable with it, and it didn't bother me to talk about it. And so oftentimes it kind of just came up in conversation, like if I might have been like just schmoozing with somebody, and and so they would say, hey, I got this too, or oh, I didn't know you had that, or I'm dealing with some sort of like gut issues. And it was just kind of like nonchalant. And then I kind of realized like over time that more and more people like I spoke with had it. And so it just naturally progressed that I became more outspoken about it and started folding that into like my platform of pro cycling. And then I think kind of the linchpin on that one was I got approached by a pharmaceutical company at the time that played a pivotal role in my recovery. And so they were interested in highlighting my story. And so that was kind of like dipping my toes into kind of the advocacy world a little bit. And so at the same time, I started getting involved with Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, which is, the world's premier foundation for those living with the condition in the United States. And so I wrote blogs for them and started just getting a little bit more involved because they, when you hear a story of someone like that's kind of overcome the condition a bit and is doing something at a high level, it just draws attention. So it gives people motivation. So that was kind of like the genesis of like my advocacy and what I was, kind of doing at the time. And then that just kind of led to me becoming more and more involved. And then I would say really what was the real genesis for Ride for IBD was kind of during COVID. I was sitting in Europe and everything was shut down. And as an athlete, like you're just idly sitting by and not really able to participate. And so I was really kind of going through a lot mentally at that time of like, okay, like, do I still want to do this? Do I still want to ride? Like what's in it for me? And then I remembered like what it took to get there and the process. And it just kind of hit me that like when people were, stuck at home during COVID, it was very similar to like when you're flaring up with the condition and you can't go anywhere. Like the condition defines every aspect of your life. So you're kind of beholden to, how you feel and you can't leave the house. So you kind of, people got this sense of like, oh, what isolation felt like with IBD. And what's cool is that, cycling has progressed to virtual riding now. So you can actually connect with people online through like a home trainer and ride with your buddy. And you might be in LA and he's in, Timbuktu and you're riding with him. And so that spurred me on during that time. And I was like, okay, we should do something for IBD and do like an international event. And so I reached out to Zwift, which is like the premier platform for that. and it has, I don't know, countless millions of people that ride the platform. And then I reached out to the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, and we created the world's first virtual IBD event. And so for cycling. And that really was like, okay, like I heard the stories of people who were like on this ride, and they would reach out and they're like, man, this is really changing for me. Like it changing the perspective of like, I thought I was alone. I thought I couldn't talk about this, but here we are joking and creating this cool environment. And so that really was the main driver of saying, okay, I see that there's a need for this, and it motivated me to keep going. So then I started Ride for IBD as a way for me to brand IBD awareness into what I was doing. So literally, I'm riding for it. And then I'm a huge fan of Red Bull and how they kind of like market their athletes with helmets and branding and reassociating like, you see like 30 athletes, and if there's someone with a Red Bull helmet, like you zone right in on them, right? It's like the best marketing ever. And so I was like, we need to do that for IBD. Like, how can I make someone stand out in the crowd, and then associate the condition with like positivity and like, hey, there's a person with IBD and they're racing and they're like out there doing this. Like, that's cool. That's badass. So yeah, I just built the website and started like reaching out to athletes and creating, helmets for them to wear. And then it just grew. Then I got to a point in my career where I was like, you know what? I've hit the pinnacle of my sporting career, and I'm like, I want to pursue Ride for IBD into like the next step, and to create basically a team of empowered, autoimmune athletes, like riding and competing in sports around the world. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at now. So I've kind of taken it. So like, I'm racing in my own kit now, Ride for IBD, whereas before I was always beholden to like whatever professional team I was on. So that's the reason why I transitioned into off-road racing, because you can race as an individual and brand yourself whatever way you want. Kind of like, if you see NASCAR and like there's the team car, but it has all the branding of the sponsors and stuff. So that's what I'm doing, and molding that in, and then creating like engagement activities. So for example, last few weeks ago at the last event in Arizona, we had the day before the ride, we did a Ride for IBD event. So we had 100+ athletes come out, ride for us. We did like part of the course, raised money for Crohn's and Colitis Foundation Arizona, and connected people to the resources. Because once you kind of make the connection of like, hey, this is IBD awareness, you got to start funneling people into like how to help them, because that's the biggest questions I tend to get. So really all this is like answering people's questions in a large format, because like, there's only so much you can do on a one-to-one basis, but if you can create a platform and a movement to help people. So yeah, that's what we're doing now. And that's the genesis. I mean, that's really long-winded, but that's hopefully in the next couple of years, you see an actual large-scale organization that's got tons of athletes that are competing around the country and internationally, and challenging the autoimmune narrative. So, and then and then also a podcast. So like just kind of layering it. I've also realized that IBD is very specific to a certain demographic of people, but it is an autoimmune condition, and that affects even larger scale of the population. So in the works right now is a podcast. We've done 2 episodes so far, but we're still in the early phases, so we haven't launched it yet because we're recording as many episodes as we can. But it's basically to kind of give you the gist of it, is we're speaking to other athletes with autoimmune conditions, and then individuals with within the realm of resources and care that can help you like guide to the pathway for these conditions, and kind of give you the answers that you're searching for. So that's kind of what I'm doing, and how this all just kind of fell into this journey that I'm now on. So
I love it, Cory. Man, you got such a good story. Like this is great stuff, guys. Turning an autoimmune disorder into essentially a brand leveraging his athlete platform. Like there's very, very few athletes. I can't even think of any off the top of my head, but there are very few athletes out there that are doing this. So Cory's killing it. Ride for IBD is going to blow up in a few years, starting to blow up now. So make sure you hop on the bandwagon now. I don't think Cory would appreciate it if you hop on the bandwagon later. So make sure you do that now. Before I let you go, Cory, where can people find you across social media? I know you mentioned you have your podcast, you have Ride for IBD. How can people stay connected with you? You know, maybe if they have, you know, maybe potentially the beginnings of autoimmune disorder, or they want to learn more about, you know, how they can leverage, you know, their platform with a disorder, maybe not IBD related. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can, best place is Instagram. It's Cory Mike 23, because I know it's very original, but that's my handle. Or you can follow us at Ride for IBD on Instagram. And then if you want to email us, it's hello@rideforibd.com. And yeah, we have a website. You can fill out a form there, and that'll go to email, and then we can answer any sort of questions. And then another great way is LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so if people really want to get in touch with me, that's a great place to reach out to me. Just Cory Greenberg. And then Ride for IBD is on there as well. And then just follow along, and you'll see the podcast popping up in the next little bit as we roll that out. So that should be pretty exciting. So we'll announce that through the different channels that we have.
Yes, well, let's make sure we follow Cory on Instagram, LinkedIn. Be ready for his new podcast. Cory, really want to thank you for joining the podcast today. It's been an amazing conversation about, you know, tying in your Jewish heritage into your professional athlete career, into advocating for IBD. I really think you got a very, very unique personal brand. If you guys, listeners, listen, if you guys want to hear more episodes like this, where I get cool guests like Cory to come on, I need you to share this episode with somebody, one person that you think you would like this episode. I need you to share it with them. It's how we grow. It's how we get bigger. This is how I find more Cory Greenbergs out there. All right. I'm going to need you guys to do that. I'm providing you guys with some pretty cool guests. I'd love it if you guys could return the favor. And till next time, keep schmoozing.